conduction now is by contact. So, charging by conduction, the object is charged by contacts. So, electrons are transferred now between the two objects. So, it's not within the same object, but rather now between two different objects. So, let's go back to our sketchbook, as we can see right here. And again, both scenarios will count. So, we have right here a pith ball, and what do we say? And if it's neutral, it's going to be intermixed of positive and negatives. They're going to move as far away as possible from each other. So that's going to be neutral. So now, here's the first scenario. We're going to charge now this object by contact. So here we have the pith ball, and here is now the lucite rod. So the lucite rod now touches it. Notice how before they didn't touch, but now they actually touch. So we are going to have now a transfer of electrons. So where are they going to go? Remember, the electrons are the only ones that moved. So originally it was neutral, but now when we touched it with the negative lucite rod, electrons will travel, and you have to be able to describe this, from the lucite rod all the way to the pith ball. So it's going to make it negative. So all these negative charges will accumulate right here. And what's going to happen now? The minute they touch, they will repel. And that's that initial push-off that you guys saw in class. Now, let's take this pith ball. Here's the string, here's the ball, and it's hanging, from it. And we make it touch a glass rod. As you guys remember, the glass rod, of course, is always positive. And once it touches the pith ball, what is going to happen? Electrons will now move from the neutral object, as you can see over here where they're intermixed. They're going to move from the neutral object, and they are going to go to the glass rod. So what are they going to leave behind? They're going to leave more positives. So initially it was neutral because now we removed the electrons, and here we go. Some of the electrons, came onto the glass rod. They made the pith ball now overall positive. So what do you guys notice over here? As a good rule of thumb, whatever the charged object is, and we touch a neutral object, whatever that charge is, it is going to it's going to charge the object the same charge. So for example, over here the lucite rod was negative, it touched the pith ball and made it negative. Over here it was positive, it touched the pith ball and made it positive. Okay? So again, you have to describe the flow of electrons. So in this first scenario right here, we have electrons flow from the negative lucite rod to the pith ball. And in the second scenario, if it's positive, you will have negative electrons flow from the pith ball all the way to the glass rod, making this overall positive. So let's erase this, let's clear this out, and now let's look, of course, in our electroscopes. So as you guys can see right here, just clear this out. As you guys can see over here in the electroscope, we have, of course, the bulb. Sorry, that's not a good circle. We have the body, and we have the leaves. So originally they're not diverging, they go straight down. And if it's neutral, we just said it's positive and negative. They're all intermixed in terms of charges. Just like that. Now, so this is, of course, as we just discussed, that's neutral. The charges are all intermixed. So if we now touch the electroscope, obviously the leaves will diverge. But if we touch it right now with the lucite rod, remember what the lucite rod is? It's, of course, going to be negative. What's going to happen? Where will the electrons flow? Electrons will flow from the lucite rod, of course, to the electroscope, making this overall negative. So there's negative everywhere, and the charge, of course, if you recall correctly, is going to be permanent. So electrons, we said, will now flow from the lucite rod to the electroscope, and of course it makes it negative. Again, same scenario counts. So it was originally negative, we touched a neutral object, and we made that the same charge as the lucite rod, which is of course negative. And of course, Here we go. We touch it now with so we're charging it by conduction with a glass rod, which is positive. So now what's going to happen? Electrons, of course, will flow from the electroscope to the glass rod, making it, of course, the same charge, which is positive. And you can, of course, see this right here. So once again, you will have to describe both the regions in the AP exam, the flow of electrons. So electrons are going to go again from the lucite rod, which is negative, to the electroscope, and the electrons, remember, those are the only ones that will move, so it's always going to be flow of electrons. The electrons are going to go from the electroscope in the second scenario onto the glass rod. So let's just recap what we learned. So today we learned how to actually charge different objects. Okay, so we said we can charge them by friction, by applying a frictional force on them. We can charge them by induction, meaning without contact, and conduction by actual contact, and therefore we transfer electrons. In the next video, we are going to look how to actually measure the actual electrical charge on each object after they are touched by conduction. Thank you, everyone. See you later.